The situation of the ecosystem on Earth is dreadful by 2056. Only the wealthy can reside within protected air domes that purify the polluted atmosphere. Large corporations have replaced traditional governments and settled disputes through their private armies. Efforts to seek sanctuary in space have proven fruitless. Nibra Corporation oversees Rubicon, the last remaining alien research hub dedicated to addressing the environmental emergency. Later one day, Commander Hannah and scientist Gavin are sent by Nibra to the Navicon shuttle in an attempt to determine Rubicon's condition. However, reaching to Rubicon isn't as simple as it sounds. The shuttle doesn't show up at the coordinates that were supposed to be on the screen, and Hannah has to do a dangerous maneuver to get the shuttle to line up with the station. The crew suspects that something has gone wrong with Navicon's systems, and upon arrival, they find out that Hannah is in the military, as evidenced by the chip she has tattooed on her neck. This disturbs the crew. After asking for a report about the navigator's course deviation and watching the algae farm go by, Hannah goes into her room and rings her sister Knopf. Knopf is also in the military, and they both grew up in poverty and joined the military for financial reasons. Unfortunately, the conversation between Hannah and Knopf is abruptly cut short when Knopf is urgently called away to attend to an emergency. Later, the Rubicon's crew drink to the fact that the majority of them will be going back to Earth after Hannah and Gavin arrive, with 3 more people on the way. Dr. Dimitri, the research team leader, invites them to play cards with him. His son Danilo has a grudge against Gavin because of his privileged background as he living safely in a dome. Hannah intervenes to defuse the situation before it escalates further. She then looks at the report brought in by the crew, which explains that the flight plan for the next day has been changed due to a strange fog cluster in the North Hemisphere, right over the city that houses most of the environmental activists. Gavin, who had once been part of an activist group facing danger, is deeply disturbed by the news of hundreds of casualties. Hannah agrees to the changed flight path and finds Gavin in the communications room, where he has been trying to access Earth's news reports but to no avail. She reminds him of the direct contact she had with Nibra and offers to ask him questions on her behalf, but Gavin declines, not trusting information from corporations. The next day, most of the crew leaves, leaving Dimitri, Gavin, and Hannah behind. Danilo takes some of the mother cultures with him, as Nibra had asked, and Dimitri assures them that they will be safe for the duration of their flight, though he seems agitated. Later, Hannah contacts her superiors to provide an update, expressing suspicion that the mother culture's scent may have been tampered with. The Nibra leaders don't seem overly concerned, but tell Hannah that she needs to get the Icarus plan ready in the next couple of days, which means she needs to speed up the study of Dimitri's algae system, which provides air and food both. However, Hannah faces challenges as Dimitri closely monitors her every move, preventing her from examining the farm in detail. Later that day, they get a distress call from the crew, who are still in transit. They're going blindly and unable to make contact with any Earth bases. Hannah tries to get in touch with them, but there's no response. She suspects there's something wrong with the optical unit's signal transmission, so she decides to go out on a spacewalk and check out the systems. But before she can, she hears screams coming through the intercom. As the crew reports, they are engulfed in flames before communication abruptly ceases. As Hannah glanced back, she was met with the sight of Earth engulfed in a dense brown fog. She rushes back to the station and attempts to contact ground control once more, but there is no response. Dimitri mourns the passing of his son. Hannah goes to check her personal tablet to find a message from Knopf, describing the chaos on Earth and ordering all units to evacuate humans to bunkers. Over the next couple of days, Hannah struggles to make contact, bringing food and asking questions about the algae system. Gavin continues to analyze the atmosphere, trying to figure out what is causing the fog to spread so quickly across the planet. It's a possible explanation for their navigational problems upon arrival and the crew's altered course, but it doesn't explain the speed of the spread. Dimitri remains secluded in his room, not wanting to engage with Hannah. She attempts to contact him, but he sends her away. After some time, Hannah decides to construct a new radio using some of the old parts she found at the station. However, she pauses when she notices Gavin behaving oddly. It turns out that the computer has completed its analysis of Earth's atmosphere, and the results terrify Gavin so badly that he attempts to self-harm. Hannah rushes to the scene and Dimitri comes out because it's an emergency. Together, they perform CPR to keep Gavin alive. Later, Gavin is taken to the hospital where Dimitri will treat him, although he doesn't seem to care much if Gavin survives or not. Hannah challenges Dimitri about his lack of concern and tells him that she knows that the algae system is much more sophisticated than his reports say. This prompts Dimitri to reveal that he has been withholding information because he believes Hannah has been spying on him. When Hannah tells Dmitri that it's not about spying, if Nebra funded the project, he gets angry and claims that the project is his and his son Danilo's. Afterwards, Gavin regains consciousness and rushes to the computers, where Gavin tells them that the fog covering the planet is toxic and that everyone on it is probably dead. At that moment, Gavin has a panic attack, and Dmitri gives him a sedative before calming him down and telling him that they're safe on the station. And he explains that the algae project was a success, providing them with enough air and food to survive for an extended period. Hannah is determined to keep working on the radio because she believes that there may still be people in the domes who could still be alive. After a spacewalk to fix the antenna, Hannah attempts to use the radio once more, but once again they receive no response. When Gavin wakes up, he explains that the toxic fog might be caused by gases from the frozen ground, something environmentalists warned about for years. He mentions there are bunkers with oxygen tanks that could have survived, but those inside will eventually run out of supplies and perish. Gavin doesn't like the idea of living in the station with only 2 other people forever, but Dmitri stops him from doing anything drastic by reminding him that if he dies, Hannah and Dmitri will too. They discover the station's system is made for 6 people, with everyone breathing out CO2 that the system turns back into oxygen. But it needs at least 3 people to work properly. Gavin agrees to stay alive, and later he and Hannah bond over their shared feeling of wasting their lives training for something that ultimately failed. Eventually, they end up spending the night together. Weeks later, Hannah notices a strange brown color on the algae farm. When she asks Dmitri about it, he reassures her that it's normal and not a cause for concern. However, once she leaves the room, Dmitri takes a sample to run some tests. The results unsettle him, but instead of informing the others, he suggests a night of gambling and drinking. During this gathering, Gavin discovers that Hannah was spying for Nebra, and Dmitri reveals why he had Danilo send fake samples. A few months ago, Nebra reneged on their contract, saying that the new algae system would only be accessible to dome residents. Dmitri was cool with this and prepared to accept the money, but Danilo was angry and rejected the deal, intending to make the system available to the public. A few days later, Hannah gets sick and finds out that the mysterious brown stuff is spreading through the algae. Then out of the blue, she gets an incredible communicators. A bunch of Nebra survivors have reached out to her. There are 300 people left in her dome, and they're running out of oxygen, so they need her help with the algae project ASAP. Hannah is shocked that they know and realizes that all the survivors are CEOs and their family members. As Dmitri inspects the algae food gel, he finds that the brown contamination is also affecting their supplies. His inspection is cut short by Hannah and Gavin, who inform him of the survivors. Hannah and Gavin explain that the domes have opened up in the fog and sent out their signal indicating that it is safe for the ship to pass through. Both Hannah and Gavin want to rescue the refugees, but Dmitri will not let them, claiming that the Rubicon was taken with the crew when they left, and that flying without it is dangerous. Gavin insists that it is their duty to help these people, but Dmitri is not interested, accusing them of being responsible for Danilo's death. After Gavin storms out in anger, leaving Hannah feeling dizzy, Dmitri begins to suspect the brown goo might be the source of her illness. Dmitri orders Hannah to get a blood sample under the pretense of a routine test, and she takes advantage of the moment to try to convince him once more. However, Dmitri remains stubborn, arguing that the CEOs are only interested in themselves. Gavin and Hannah discuss their options in private and decide that they will leave with or without Dmitri's cooperation. They agree that they will take the samples forcefully if necessary. To ruin their plan, Dmitri reveals to them the scale of the spread of brown goo and blames it on Hannah. He tells them that the algae feeds on the crew's urine as part of the station's nutrient cycle and that they are also hormonal. This brings Dmitri to an unexpected conclusion, that Hannah is pregnant. At first, Hannah is shocked, thinking she is not pregnant because soldiers are not supposed to be fertile. Then Dmitri tells her that her chip is malfunctioning because of the long-term lack of contact with ground base. The statement that the algae would be fine, but that Hannah's baby would not be if she went down to Earth, does not affect Hannah's decision, but does affect Gavin's decision to stay with her as well. Hannah spends a lot of time on the simulator, practicing how to land the station safely through the little opening in the fog, and Gavin tries to communicate with her. He listens when she tells him that the station is not a good place to have a baby, and that is what makes him agree to go with her back to Earth. Dmitri realizes that he won't be able to survive in the station on his own, so he reluctantly agrees to go with them. As they are getting ready to leave, the shuttle's cooling systems unexpectedly shut down, resulting in the gas tanks overheating. Realizing the shuttle is going to blow up, Hannah decides to disconnect the shuttle from the station and let it drift away and blow up at a safe distance, leaving them stuck in the station forever. Gavin is angry that Hannah didn't think of a better solution before taking such a drastic step. He decides to dispatch a message to Earth himself about their situation, but the CEOs tell Gavin to ask about Icarus. Hannah explains that her real goal was to get the algae samples, and she was supposed to blow up the entire lab, which they can eject and fly down separately. However, the lab isn't designed for passengers and it can't be controlled. In spite of the danger, Gavin is still of the opinion that the Icarus system should be used because saving 300 lives is more important to him than saving their own. Hannah, however, is not so sure. While Gavin is asleep, Hannah finds a path of algae on a wall that leads to a panel where she finds proof of sabotage to the cooling system. She goes to Dmitri and he admits to sabotaging the cooling system, but says he was only trying to delay the explosion, not cause it. Hannah calls Dmitri a coward and orders him to get ready to launch the Icarus. Dmitri is surprised that she knows about it, realizing that Nebra sent her on purpose because they knew a catastrophe was imminent and deliberately kept it secret. Dmitri is convinced that the CEOs, having their bunkers, wouldn't share the algae with the crew if they had to. This raises doubts in Hannah's mind. When they contact the ground base to inform them about their plan to descend with the lab, Hannah requests to speak with one of the soldiers involved in the evacuations. The representative reveals that the bunker had limited space reserved for the CEOs and their families, leaving the soldiers outside after they completed their duty. This means Knopf is also dead now. This news devastates Hannah, and she leaves the room to cope with her emotions in private. Later, Gavin finds Hannah and tries to persuade her to proceed with the mission. However, Hannah has undergone a change of heart and refuses to save the lives of people who consider others expendable. Hannah believes the station is better for her child than the impoverished region from which they came. But Gavin doesn't understand because he's always had money to spend on his projects. Later, Hannah attempts to remove one of the chips from her head before going to bed, but strange sounds wake her. It's Gavin tying up Dmitri, and he's going to destroy the lab whether he likes it or not. Hannah feels she has no option but to join them, but at the last moment, she pushes Gavin away, and the Icarus system is destroyed. She could have fixed it, but she refused to. Gavin storms out, leaving Hannah to free Dmitri. After a while, Hannah receives a transmission from Earth on her computer, but she does not listen to it and delete it immediately before disconnects the communicators and searches for Gavin. She finds that Gavin has sacrificed his life, and she only finds his body. Hannah and Gavin say goodbye and let Gavin's body float in space. Now Hannah knows that she needs 3 people to produce enough air, so she decides to quickly repair Icarus. She believes that Gavin sacrificed his life so they could return to Earth to survive. Dmitri is shocked and angry because he had lied about needing air from 3 people to prevent Gavin's death. Years later, Hannah has a baby girl named after her sister Knopf. One day, while Knopf is playing on an old radio, it suddenly comes to life with a message from Earth and tells Knopf that there are humans in the south who have emerged from the bunkers and have invited Knopf along with them. Knopf and Hannah share a moment's hope that they may be not alone after all. And with this, the movie comes to an end. Thanks for tuning in, guys.